Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
All right, very, very exciting NBA All-Star weekend that saw Wemby and Chris Paul try to game the skills challenge system and get disqualified. That saw a G League player win his third consecutive dunk contest, and Anthony Edwards and LeBron James piece out of the actual confusing All-Star game before it happened. We're going to do a State of the Wolves Monday, but big picture first half of the season tint to it here. Presented in part by Kieran's, just across the street from Target Center. Dex?
Yeah, you don't have to sit out anything at Kieran's. You just sit at the bar stool and you do your job there, okay? You get a nice pint. You get the game day specials. You don't have to worry about anything from there. Kieran's is just steps away from Target Center and also Target Field. It's a great atmosphere for pregame or postgame for the Wolves as well. So if you're looking for a stop before or afterwards from any Wolves game at Target Center this season, go stop in at Kieran's. Tell them Flagrant Howls and Score North sent you. Shout out to Kieran, just steps away from the Target Center.
Also, thanks to a Federated Insurance for powering Flagrant Howls this season. And every season, I guess. Flagrant Howls is proud to say that Federated is here helping our business at Score North and across our podcast network. And Federated has been helping business owners inside Minnesota and outside for over a century. Based in Owatonna, Minnesota, since 1904, they are here to help you with risk management, safety, preventing claims, so you can stay focused on growing your business. Go to federatedinsurance.com to find out more information. Federated, where it's our business to protect yours. All right, so Dex will give us the overview here at the All-Star break, as we do every Monday, and then we'll go through our different questions and categories, and we'll look at it through a big picture first half of the season lens. So, Dex, what's the overview?
All right, so here's where the Wolves sit. They are 31-25 on the season. They are a game out of the top six. So right now they are the 7th seed. If the playoffs started today, they would host the Mavericks in a play-in situation, which would be
the depleted no-size Mavericks right now. Yeah.
Right now they're 14th in offensive rating. They're 6th in offensive rating post-All-Star break. Their playoff odds actually went down a couple points from both sides. So ESPN.com has the Wolves as a 65% chance of making the playoffs. On Basketball Reference, it's 90%, so there's still a very wide gap between Basketball Reference and ESPN, but both did drop a little bit from week to week. And yeah, 0.1% chance to win the LOB according to ESPN, and 0.6 from Basketball Reference. And again, they'd host the Mavs in a play-in situation. So with the All-Star break now over and done with, Wolves vibes are blank. What are the Wolves vibes through the first 56 games, Judd?
The Wolves vibes are mercurial, which means the definition is subject to sudden or unpredictable changes of mood or mind. And that's this Wolves team. In the first 56 games, this team has 6 streaks of 3 wins or more, but 4 losing streaks of 3 games or more. They're mercurial. They can't decide. There's sudden changes of who they are, who they're going to be, especially against teams that you think that they should beat. And then they come out against Denver and they hand it to them here. Fully healthy Nuggets team. Wow, that's impressive. They then, game before the All-Star break, again, they step up and play fantastic. So this team is thoroughly at times confusing. Now, I hope that they're getting on the right track. I like the fact, and it's partially based on guys being out because of injuries. I like the fact that some of their young players who are having to play because Chris Finch has no choice are stepping up. So that's good. But they are just a mercurial, frustrating bunch through 56 games in its totality.
Yeah. Yes, some of that is to be. I think this is what's kind of amazing is like, and I'll give you my Wolves vibes are not as doom and gloom as everyone thought a few months ago after they made this franchise crippling trade. They made a trade to potentially take a step back or plateau in the short term to open up growth for the long term. And it was pretty obvious when they made the trade. Oh, okay, yep, this is a huge organizational shakeup. There are reasons to believe that they could be competitive this year for sure. Getting back to the Western Conference Finals immediately seems like a tough bar to set. So they're gonna need, people are calling it a gap year or a transition year or whatever. Like, they're gonna need a minute is sort of all right, they made this trade. They're gonna need a minute. And it was clunky early on, and it still is kind of clunky when you lose a home game to the Bucks, who aren't playing Damian Lillard and Giannis. But they're sitting here with the easiest schedule remaining the rest of the way in the NBA. This week's going to be tough because you're playing Houston, Oklahoma City twice, and then the Lakers. But after that 4-game stretch, the schedule lightens up. And so they're going to have a chance to get to maybe like the 4 or the 5 seed by the end of this whole thing. Once you get into early April, once they play the Jazz 3 more times, and you got to win those games, and they are prone to lowering their level of competition in situations like that. But I think people were so quick to just be like, this is a ridiculous trade. How could they possibly do this? Like, super short-sighted, when it was more meant for a long-term view. And if we look at it with perspective, the fact that they're sitting here still really competitive, beating some of the best teams in the league, you're finding out some things about some of the other younger players on the roster, and I have a take about that too later on here. The vibes are not as doom and gloom as everyone thought 2 or 3 months back.
I would say the vibes for me are learning to fly, if I can just basically borrow a Foo Fighters term. They get off to this clunky start because they traded Cat late. They're trying to figure out who fits into these puzzles. At times, they get rookies their run, but at other times, they want to bash them to the bench. But I think over the last month, especially, last 6 weeks, to be honest, they have looked finally like they're a part. They can learn to fly. They can flap their wings. They can jump off the edge and not completely murder themselves. Now, the easiest schedule part is good for the Wolves, but they've obviously dropped the ball a lot against some bad teams, just like they did a couple years ago with this first iteration of Gobert. So I think they've found their wings, which is good. I'm excited to see what direction they go in from here on out. I think they have as good of a chance as anyone still to be out of the play-in and playing in the top 6. So I think they have finally found their wings a little bit, and they're learning to fly.
All right, Judd, let's get to our favorite current Wolves thing here. What's
lots of things actually to like at this point, so I will just drill down to one. It is the recent play, and it's growing in volume now, of Jaden McDaniels after a really slow, uninspiring start. He's gone from being a guy who was standing in the corner, waiting to take threes, which he's not particularly good at corner threes all of the time. And it's like, where's the activity? Well, as of the last month or so, we've seen it. And there's a stark contrast. He looks like a guy who's worth his contract now. And, there's a few guys on this team who have the Energizer Bunny aspect. And when they unleash it and use it, they're really good. But McDaniels has gone from being a guy who you said, okay, if you're going to trade Cat, you got to get more. And for a month plus, you didn't. Well, now you are. And I don't know if it was a comfort thing, a come to Jesus thing with Chris Finch or teammates or what. But my favorite thing is that this is the Jaden McDaniels that we expected. And his play certainly was not beholden to Cat being on the roster. So, this is what he can do. And this is what he needs to now, in the last, 26 games, continue to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way you put it. There was a time in the first month and a half or 2 months where it felt like $25 million a year in a soft salary cap league was a really steep price to pay for a really good perimeter defender, but who, not even a 3-and-D guy. He's like a D guy who could give you some spurts offensively, but was not a consistent three-point shooter. He doesn't need to be a knockdown three. He's going to be streaky, and he's been through now the last month. He's been a much better three-point shooter. I don't think he's ever going to be, JJ Redick lining him up and knocking him down, or even like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's kind of streaky too. But if he can use his athleticism and his size and the Energizer Bunny gene, as you put it, to go get offensive rebounds, and maybe instead of shooting from the corner, you are driving into the paint and trying to posterize somebody, just being more active, and you've seen a lot more of that. So I would say my completely different topic on my current favorite Wolves thing. Through 56 games, and also through some of the things he said during the All-Star break, which I have a clip to play for you guys, we're finding out exactly who Anthony Edwards is as a player in both good and bad ways, depending on how you look at it. Now that this has become officially his franchise, so to speak, because Carl was the longest tenured player and Carl was kind of the bigger brother, Anthony Edwards has been allowed to sink or swim as the guy here starting this season. And I think the good is he's become one of the best three-point shooters at volume in the league. This is one of the great three-point shooting seasons in NBA history. 10 attempts per game, 41% make rate. And he does have some stretches where he'll give you like a 1 for 10 night, but he is legitimately one of the best three-point shooters in the league. He's up from 24.5, 25 points a game to 27.5 points, so his scoring average is going up. You still see the playmaking has some room to grow, but he's learning how to unlock double teams. On the flip side, and I can't believe I'm putting this in kind of a bad category. Actually, I was on Kilborn's podcast last week, and we were talking about some of the NBA all-time greats and where do you think Ant slots in terms of play style. And what we're seeing here is he's much more of a Kobe Bryant style player than like a LeBron style player. Like LeBron is out there first and foremost to make the right basketball play for 20 years. Instead of looking to give you his offensive bag for 40 minutes, because if he wanted to, he could score 40 points. LeBron meticulously makes the right basketball play after play after play after play. Assists go up, rebounds go up, ball movement, everything. Kobe would make the right play sometimes, but was oftentimes more interested in just showing you how great Kobe is and Kobe's bag. That doesn't have to be a bad thing, because if you're doing it on the level of Kobe, you're going to win championships and you're going to be in the Hall of Fame and one of the greatest players of all time. Personality-wise, Ant a little more fun-loving than Kobe. But both those guys are out there to kill you with offense, lock you down when they're motivated on defense, and sometimes are willing to not make the right basketball play because, damn it, I'm going to rise up and hit this ridiculous shot right now. And so we're kind of finding out the good and the bad. I think it's all ultimately if the comparison is Diet Kobe in the end, I think we'd all take that. But we're finding out a lot about Anthony Edwards as a player this year, and it helps you kind of build the things around him that he needs. And then there was this whole face of the league conversation that took place over the weekend. I'm going to play this clip for you guys, and then we can react to what Anthony Edwards said to NBA TV about, hey, do you think you could be a guy that's the face of the league? And he said, well, that's what they have Wemby for, and they pushed him on.
Tell the truth. Tell the truth. You can and will be that guy.
Well, I'm capable of being that guy, but I don't want to be that guy. Put it like that. I want to be the guy to just show up and hoop and just kill dudes and go home.
And I'm not saying they're exactly the same, because Kobe was a much more serious, bristly teammate, and Ant is more of a fun-loving guy.
Right.
But that was kind of Kobe's basketball DNA too, where he became kind of the face of the league between Jordan and LeBron, but it wasn't a natural place for him. And he was a little rough around the edges personality-wise. But Kobe wanted to show up, kill you, and then just kind of go back, just kind of march to the beat. He's not going to go hang out with a bunch of other NBA players during the summer and go on, wine drinking cruises and stuff. So Ant basically saying, yeah, I don't really want to be the face of the league. That's what Wemby can go do. I just want to kill people and then kill people on the court.
Yeah.
And then go back home.
If Ant delivers with that, that's awesome. But the thing is, there is still there is a basketball maturity that needs to take place here, and that's the thing that I guess I've been disappointed about. That I thought the Olympic thing would trigger it more so, and it's failed to do so. I mean, there is no questioning Ant's talent, especially as you said, when he applies himself. But there's also a lack of I don't just want to kill people. I want my teammates to do the same thing. And if they don't, they're going to be held accountable. We're not there yet. And so that's the thing. I don't care, the face of the league thing. And are you, what's your role here? That's marketing. And Ant will get plenty of that just because he's a charismatic, fun guy. But I need Ant to also, like the Kobe thing, the step in the Kobe thing isn't just in his game. It's in the accountability thing. And he does get mad at times. I would like to see him wired a little bit more as far as games go, because when you look at how the Wolves have lost games, like that Bucks loss, that's inexcusable. They're without two of their best players, and I need Ant to be grabbing guys by the collar and saying, we ain't going to lose. And it's not just because of me. I'm not going to let you take the night off, which is, I mean, the Timberwolves, the cat trade's funny because the cat trade is like the catch-all, right? Well, they traded Cat. What's going to happen? I mean, the reality is this is a really good team still. And the reality is it feels like nobody has held them accountable as much as necessary. And then if they play the Nuggets or OKC, it's like, let's go. I need that more. And I think that starts with Ant. So Ant can be, as far as what the league is concerned, I don't care. He can be whatever he wants. As far as the Wolves are concerned, though, I need him to be the guy to play with a little bit more edge when it comes to how he addresses his teammates.
Yep. That is a huge distinction between the two of them. And Kobe wasn't always, Kobe was sometimes bad at that, but he had the insulation of Phil Jackson and Shaq as he tried to figure it out. I think later in his career he became a little more empathetic. Like he starts having kids and has some injuries and whatnot. So there is a distinction for sure, but like just in terms of profile of who they are, we've been waiting for Ant to become this, like, why doesn't he could go get triple doubles like Luka does and LeBron. Yeah, he'll make the right play oftentimes. Yeah, but I don't think he has any interest in averaging 10 assists per game. Well, he'd rather average 34 points a game at some point than 10 assists per game.
Yes.
You know?
I don't need him to be tactful with his teammates. Like, I think Chris Finch can take care of that part. I just need him, like, if you're a Wolves fan, you need guys to show up for far more games. There's 82. It's a lot. There's going to be off nights. So, like, it's not going to be like 82 games of go. That doesn't work. But what does work is you got to show up more. This team, forget Cat, this team has failed to show up far too often. And I pin a lot of that back on Ant because he's the guy that leads. This team's going to take their lead from what he does and how he approaches things.
Yeah. Dex, your favorite current Wolves thing?
So I know we're doing the 56-game sample, and I'm going to use something as my favorite thing that is a lower sample size, but I think it still translates and dovetails into the rest of the season. My favorite Wolves thing is Nas Reed is a legitimate starter. So in these 7 games that Nas has been inserted into the starting lineup, and again, I know it's a smaller sample, but in those 7 starts, he's averaging 21 points, 48% shooting from the floor, 36% from 3, grabbing a bunch of boards, almost averaging 10 rebounds per game. Nas deserves to be a starter. And I think we're seeing it now unfold a little bit here in the small sample. And look, I know Julius Randle's injury, when he comes back, we'll see how the deck chairs are shuffled a little bit. But Naz Reid deserves to be a starter. And we're seeing it over the last couple weeks that he's been able to be a starter. And I want him in the starting rotation going forward. He has proven enough that, yes, he's a great spark plug off the bench. He's a fan favorite. He gets the biggest ovation in the arena every time he's announced. But I've seen enough. Give Naz Reid the starting minutes. He absolutely deserves it.
Yeah, and I'm going to transition real quick. I'm going to cut the line here because this dovetails into my least favorite current Wolves thing, is that it took almost 56 games to figure out what you thought you might start to figure out early after the Cat trade. Because like one of the things that was assumed was that we'd see more of the young nucleus be given space to blossom. And I know that salary matching and just asset management, you brought in Julius Randle as just a piece of the trade. And so he, what are you supposed to do? Just like not play him? I get the conundrum that they were in. And they thought too, like he could actually come in here and he's been good for chunks of the first 56 games. He's been way too much of a scapegoat for some of these losses. So I will credit him for that. But he's 30 years old and he doesn't really fit the 3 to 5 year runway that we're looking at here going into Ant's prime. So you make this trade and instead of allowing some of the younger dudes, the Nazes and the Jadens, all the way down to the guys in the rotation that didn't even start playing until like 2 or 3 weeks ago, Randle gets plopped in, takes the second most shots per game of anyone on the team, plays the third most minutes of anyone on the team, and has the second highest usage rate of anyone on the team behind only Anthony Edwards. In fact, percentage of usage, Julius Randle has a higher usage rate than Paul George, DeMar DeRozan, and Jamal Murray per game this season. And yeah, he can get you 20 points. He can grab you some rebounds. He can make some plays. He's a better player than I think people give credit for, but it's not the perfect fit. And now we're finally seeing it. Dex hit on the Nas Reed numbers since he was a starter. 21 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, almost 50% from the field. Jaden McDaniels since Julius Randle went down. Being unlocked. Just here's the freedom to go out there, score more points. We need you, buddy. Go out there and get them. Okay. 18 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.5 stocks, 50% shooting from the floor. So those are all good things. But my least favorite thing is that it took you an injury and like 45 or 50 games before you really started to find out what this energizing young nucleus could look like when unleashed.
And I'll play off that by saying, and I think this was after the OKC win last Thursday, you can already hear Chris Finch saying, well, we'll play the young guys, but when guys come back, he had some comment about, because these guys are playing, they're playing great at times. So they're going to have bumps, right? It's not going to be perfect. But they have definitely gotten a spark. And Finch was asked about, and I think the question was framed of, hey, some fans have been down on, talk about the fact that fans don't like you for not playing the young guys. And Finch said, no, they played great now, but, they'll remain part of it, but we'll see when guys come back. And it's like, no, Chris, you need to have a bigger rotation. Like, there are guys that are playing now, and I'm not saying that Dante DiVincenzo, that Randle shouldn't play. I do think that Julius should come off the bench for Naz, to Declan's point. But the reality is, like we've talked about for months now, there are teams that have far bigger rotations than the Wolves. The Wolves need to expand their rotation. Like, if Terrence Shannon Jr. goes back to DNP-CD, I got a problem with it. The kid needs to play.
And I think he's going to.
Well, I got a problem with that.
He's going to.
Yeah. And look,
it's crazy.
Again, the Cat trade has served as a way to absolve Finch a bit. I mean, the trade was made right before training camp. He's trying to get guys in. He's trying to learn. Okay, that's fine. But there's like a statute of limitations on that trade as far as like excuses go. And when you see what some of these guys can do, they need to play more. And that doesn't mean that I'm saying that you need to bench DiVincenzo or Randle, but you need to mix up the minutes and expand the rotation.
Hold on. I put DiVincenzo and Randle in totally different bins because DiVincenzo is part of this.
I'm just throwing them out as names. Yes.
Okay. And DiVincenzo is an energy guy, and he is versatile. And quite frankly, I think him and Anthony Edwards in the starting lineup together was working really well. Now, the question would be, like, if you're going to bring Julius off the bench, well, part of what was working was, like, point Julius, separating Conley and Julius, because Conley kind of feels like, well, what am I doing out here? If he's going to initiate and be the second highest usage player, then let's separate us. And so it actually worked a lot better when those guys were separated more. So I would just draw a distinction between Julius and DiVincenzo.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying bench guys who were playing and are out now. I am saying the rotation needs to be expanded. And the other thing is, too, if when Chris Finch's head hits the pillow at night, his biggest concern is Conley and Randle's playing time, I'm fine with that. Because they're not the future. I mean, Mike Conley's in his last year. He's not going to be back next year. That dude has to retire.
He's under contract.
I know, but he should retire. He should retire, and he knows it. And Julius very well might not be back. So I'm not going to bend over backwards for them. I would far rather make sure that I'm playing my young guys because I think because of guys being out that they have hit on something here, and it needs to be explored more, not suppressed.
Yeah. Dex, your least favorite current Wolves thing?
Yeah, I think just not being able to get an accurate look at Dante. He gets off to a really poor start from an offensive perspective. Then he finds himself injured with a toe injury, and now we're kind of just waiting for him to come back. And he was the one that I was more excited to watch and see how he fits. And he's got this kind of killer mindset from his college days, and he's a great teammate and all this stuff. And in the games that I've been at Target Center this year, you can see and just feel his energy even when he's not playing. And it's too bad that he, number one, got off to such a rough offensive start that I think people got down on him, which I don't think is very fair. And then two, the fact he's injured, and we just have to kind of wait and see how he fits back into the puzzle piece. It's kind of frustrating because I think he is still part of the solutions here long term with the Timberwolves from this season and beyond. But we just have to wait and see where that fit exactly is.
You know what's crazy is that Knicks game, the tribute to Cat game, just a total embarrassment for the Timberwolves and the franchise. You literally yes. you rolled out the carpet for a guy that you traded because you didn't want him on the team anymore, and it became a home game for the Knicks basically. And that game was over in the second quarter, and DiVincenzo was out there with the Luka Garzas and the Josh Minets to finish that game. And I think in part, like, you needed 5 guys to be out there, and there might have been a couple injuries, if I remember. But also, it kind of felt like a message to DiVincenzo from Finch, like, dude, sit in this. You have been moping. You have been playing way less capable than you are. And since that game, and of course he gets hurt right before the next Knicks game, so we only got to see it for like a month. And he started a bunch of these games. It clicked, man. Like, after that game, it was like, okay, I am a Timberwolf. This is my next 3 years. And you can see it too. He's having, and maybe he loved living there.
I really like New York. I like
my Nova guys.
My Nova teammates. I really liked them.
Took him a minute to kind of mentally process, but since that Knicks disaster, and he's out there kind of sitting in it.
Yep.
15 games. He shot 44% from 3-point range over those 15 games, which is much more like Dante DiVincenzo.
Yep.
On 8 attempts per game. 15.5 points a game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, energy all over the place. So, yeah, it'd be great to see that again before the end of the season. Okay, before we get to our last question here, which is what needs to happen for this to be a successful season now that we're entering the second half here. Let's shout out MSP Plumbing, Heating and Air. Emphasis on the heating aspect today here in the Twin Cities.
I just checked my phone, boys. It is minus 12 outside. It is minus 12 outside. And so, yes, Phil is right. For all your plumbing, heating, cooling, and drain needs, check out my friends at MSP Plumbing, Heating and Air. This one is important because this is clearly something where if there is something even the least bit wrong with your furnace right now, it needs to get fixed, and it needs to get fixed fast. MSP understands that. 100% family-owned and operated business. They are committed to taking care of you and your family. Building trust is a big part of how they do business. So once you deal with them, I'm going to tell you, you're going to want them back because these are very important things, of course, in your home. Right now, book a $49 plumbing inspection by Friday and enter to win 2 tickets plus a $100 gift card for food, beverages, and more to the March 9th Wild game. For service, give them a call, the Wild. Back to the Wolves, back to the Wild. For service, give them a call, 651-615-4292, or check out their website, callmsp.com. Callmsp.com. If anything is wrong with your furnace, you need it fixed fast, by people who understand. Those are my friends at MSP Plumbing, Heating, and Air.
You know what, though? If you are cold, why don't you just go into Brixworth in the North Loop and belly up? Just go get some of that that warm, piping hot Detroit-style pizza, those piping hot wings that people rave about. Brixworth in the North Loop, just walking distance from Target Center. You can go drink the signature Nas Reed Hazy IPA. Great place to watch away games. Great place to pregame for home games. It's become quite the spot pregame for Wolves games. So get on in there, enjoy a snack, enjoy a beverage, and hang out with some friends at Brixworth in the North Loop. They also have the OG location in Burnsville where they brew their own craft beer as well. So check them out. If you haven't been in there, it's an awesome spot. Easy for me to say. Brixworth in the North Loop. Okay, what needs to happen now going forward for this to be deemed a successful season in your guys' minds?
I think the Wolves, and these are very doable things, okay? I think the Wolves need to be a top 6 team. The play-in, they're too good for. Like it's a tough conference, I get that, but this team is good. This team needs to be top 6. And by the way, if they apply themselves, they will be. If they apply themselves against, like, Phil, your point is they've got an easy schedule, but that's also where they've tripped up way too much. So, number 1, get in the top 6, stay out of the play-in, and number 2, win around. Win around. After that, I get it. I think that the expectation that this might be like a Western Conference Finals team every year now or something like that is still a bit of a stretch. But I don't think it's too much to ask for a top 6 finish in the Western Conference and for them to win a playoff round. I would consider that to be a successful season. And I don't think that's asking like a ton.
Yeah, I would even like just say win around. I mean, if let's say they happen to finish, because all these teams are grouped together. Let's say they do finish 7 seed and they have to win a play-in game, whatever. Like, okay, go beat the Grizzlies in a 7-game series. You know, when it's crazy because, like, obviously record wise, they're 14 back of the Thunder, for example, and the Thunder just consistently night after night have been the best team in the NBA, right? I mean, the Cavaliers are right there too, and the Celtics are maybe not as dominant regular season. There's probably a switch to be flipped there at some point. So, but when you watch the Wolves and the Thunder play each other,
yeah, and
we'll see it 2 more times here, it doesn't feel to me like there's a 14-game gap between those two teams. Like when the Wolves there's a wider variance night to night in the regular season of what you're going to get Wolves versus Thunder. The Wolves are going to give you way more clunkers so far this season than the Thunder do. But when the Wolves bring their best game, like their 95th percentile game, they are right there with the 5 or 6 best teams in the league. The difference is a lot of those other teams are bringing their best on a more regular basis, and that's kind of an indictment of Anthony Edwards in some ways, because like when you come out and start 0 for 16 from the field against the Bucks, some of that is just crazy bad luck, but some of it's like, guys, lock it in here and don't dig yourself such a hole against a depleted team.
Just improve at home. Like literally, just improve at home.
They have the worst home record of any of the top 8 seeded teams in the Western Conference. They're 16-13 at home. The Thunder are 25-3 at home. The Grizzlies are 21-6 at home. So like that is it. On the road, the Wolves are 3 games above 500 on the road, and like the Lakers are under 500 on the road. The Clippers are under 500. The Mavericks are Mavericks, Kings, Warriors, Suns are terrible on the road. Spurs terrible on the road. So
you lost to Washington at home.
Yeah.
Come on.
So go win even if let's say you're the 6th seed and you get a rematch with either the Nuggets or the Grizzlies, who you saw a couple years ago, or if it's the Rockets. I'm not going to think before that series starts, oh man. Like the first time they played the Nuggets in a series, you're like, oh man, like a couple years back.
Right.
Oh, they're probably screwed. There's no way. I would not think that same thing. Hey, if I get peak Ant and DiVincenzo's back and a couple of these young guys are in the rotation. So, Dex, what needs to happen for it to be successful for you?
Yeah, I would say a playoff series win, and I can group in the play-in as one of those situations. And then, I don't know, not get embarrassed in the first round either. Like, if they lose a 6 or 7 game series in the first round, I wouldn't be completely upset about that. If they get bounced and swept in 4 games against one of those teams like the Rockets or Grizzlies, etc., I consider that also a disappointing end. But I think it's more of, can you figure out which players, like Nas Reed being in the starting lineup and Terrence Shannon Jr. and Rob Dillingham showing you things, like are there potential growth moments in those silver linings that I know some fans don't love to hear about? Are there steps being taken to where you look at this thing next year with the right puzzle pieces in place? Then I think it still can be a successful season in the long run. But probably a playoff win after going to the Western Conference Finals is probably at least a starting point for a lot of Wolves fans.
How would you guys feel, for instance, let's say they were like 5 games better. Like they had kept Cat, and they were 5 games better than they are right now, which I think that's reasonable. So they would be, I don't know that would be the case. I will say that because they would still have issues with like Gobert coming down a notch, Conley coming down a notch, and maybe they would have turned to the young guys a little earlier. But let's grant that if they had kept Cat in the short term, they would be better than they are right now. So instead of 31-25, let's say they would be 36-20 and fighting right there for the 3 seed with like the Nuggets, and they'd be like a half game behind the Nuggets right there with the Grizzlies. And I guarantee you that they get for sure to the second round of the playoffs. And then we'll see what happens after that. But then they get to the summer.
Yeah, they'd be screwed.
And you're sitting here, you're into the second apron still. You're in the second apron, and you got to get out of the second apron. But you're about to pay Cat like $50 million. I have to go look at where he's at. He's on the way up to $60 million at the end of the contract. It's more like 50 right now. And Naz Reid's about to be a free agent. What do you do? Oh, man, we just won 50 games again, and we got to the second round of the playoffs. So do you trade Cat before the draft and then work it out with Naz? Or that people are going to be pissed then,
what's
too?
the trade? But if teams know that you're absolutely at that time forced to trade Cat, what's the trade?
And you'd be trading him to get below the second apron, so you'd have to be – teams would kind of know you're desperate in that situation.
Way more of a dump.
A lot more of a dump trade.
Yeah.
It would be a really weird, tough spot for the franchise to be in. Not a championship team. And I know there's a section of people that think, no, they were about to be a championship team. I disagree. And if they were actually about to become a championship team, it is one of the worst front office blunders in the history of the NBA. I don't think it is that. But that's the situation they would have been facing, is they would have had to dump salary going into the summer to keep Naz. And then whatever, they wouldn't have DiVincenzo either, and they wouldn't be able to keep Nickeil Alexander-Walker because he'd be walking as free agent. So you'd be Ant, Cat, maybe you move Gobert for 25 cents on the dollar, but I don't know, man.
I just wish, and look, the Cat trade is going to be a talker all season long. I understand that. But I wish we could quit attributing everything to it. Like, to me, we're past it. To me, the Timberwolves are losing games for obvious reasons that you can see. And it's not Karl. It's the fact that there are nights where they literally throw the ball, they roll the ball out, and that's all they do. And then there's like that OKC game last Thursday was such an indictment, because it's like, this is how, and the Denver game, they blew the drawers off Denver full strength. They never trailed against the best team, arguably, in the league right now. So I feel like the Cat trade is just now the convenient excuse for everything. Yeah. When I think the problems are, you need more maturity from Ant. You need and Chris Finch too. Like we have probably given Finchy a little bit too big of a pass, because some of these rotations and hesitation to play young guys, which we've talked about, but it really has become a problem at times. And now Terrence Shannon Jr., think about the quote on Thursday from Finch. He essentially said, yeah, you know what? We drafted him because he's older, and we figured he could step in and play. Well, the follow-up is, so why wasn't he? Like, he literally said, we drafted the guy, Tim drafted the guy, who was, I think, 24, because that gave us a chance to have a fully matured player play. And it's like, oh, okay, but he didn't play.
I'd be so curious to know, because there's been a couple stretches where he was hurt and Dillingham was hurt and whatever, but they played 30-ish or whatever games with like an 8-man, 7.5-man rotation.
Yes.
And I'd be so curious about the behind the scenes between Finch and Tim Connolly.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Did they agree? Yeah. You know what? These guys, they do need more seasoning, or they're not ready. But there's a lot of. This could be fun down the stretch, because they have to beat the bad teams, but they have statistically the easiest schedule once you get past this week remaining in the NBA. They could go on a run, and they could work their way up to like the 4 or 5. I would say massive disappointment if you don't feast on some of these games down the stretch, even with your injury issues. Mm-hmm. If you don't rise up and feast on some of these games to work your way up the standings, it would be disappointing.
If Nas goes back to the bench, I will. Sports Dad's head will pop right off.
Oh man, it's gonna.
Don will have a lot of cleanup in this room, because my head's just gonna pop right off.
We will hit you guys with our hottest Wolves takes later this week. We'll talk to Kyle And the Wolves are back in action Friday, right? So Friday at Houston, and then they get that. It's like a Sunday, Monday, back-to-back, home and home against Oklahoma City in a week. So some fun games up on the schedule here. All right, dudes, this is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. Sports Dad, Producer Dex, I'm Phil, Flagrant Howls.